In modern life, amid countless relationships, we cannot help but ask ourselves, is the love I'm searching for truly authentic? At times, we are easily swept up by societal norms, where love is seen as a pursuit, a destination that must be reached. However, the truth that few recognize is this: real love is not a destination, but an infinite journey that begins from the very core of who we are. Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, pointed out that relationships with others can only become sincere and lasting once you are truly in harmony with yourself. True love is not about finding someone to love. It is a journey of self-discovery, acceptance, and reconciliation with your own being. This journey is not about chasing perfection, but about learning to love and care for yourself completely, transcending the barriers and labels that society imposes. And to do that, you must come to accept that love is not merely about being loved. It is the capacity to love yourself, and from there to open up a space where genuine love with another can flourish. This is the foundation upon which relationships can grow with resilience and truly bring happiness. 1. Relationships are mirrors, reflecting the incomplete soul. The person who makes you love the deepest and the one who hurts you the most is often the same person. Love is not only where we give sweetness, but also a mirror reflecting the hidden corners of ourselves we've long kept concealed. Carl Jung referred to this as the projective mechanism, the unconscious tendency to project unresolved inner parts onto someone outside of us. In a relationship, the intense emotional responses we experience, whether passionate infatuation or deep anxiety, are often signals that a part of the ego is speaking. You are drawn to someone because they reflect something within you, a sense of freedom, creativity, or soulful depth, aspects of yourself you long to reconnect with. Likewise, the traits in others that cause discomfort, selfishness, arrogance, or fragility, are often reflections of parts of you that you've not yet been willing to acknowledge. Love, therefore, becomes the highest school of the soul. It brings you face to face with the shadow self, not only the darkness, but also the buried gifts, expression, survival instinct, and the yearning to be seen. But before you can harmonize with all these aspects, you will likely feel inadequate, rejected, or even abandoned, again and again. When someone makes you feel small or unworthy, it may be a reflection of an old wound of insecurity you haven't yet healed. When you find yourself repeatedly pulled into controlling or dependent relationships, ask yourself, is there a part of me that has not yet learned to honor my own boundaries? Carl Jung did not teach us to eliminate the shadow, but to embrace it, understand it, and integrate it. Relationships, especially the most challenging ones, are companions on the journey of self-transformation. You don't need to avoid difficult relationships, but you should ask, what is this relationship trying to teach me about myself? When you dare to look into that mirror, you don't just see the other person, you see your own soul, longing to be loved, accepted, and made whole again. 2. The shadow, the rejected self, is the root cause of relationship breakdown. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." In every relationship, from romantic love to friendships and family ties, this unconscious realm is always where it is always present. It doesn't exist on the outside, but seeps into every word, reaction, and emotion. This is the shadow, the part of you that you've denied, the part you don't want to see, yet it quietly manipulates everything you do. The shadow isn't always something dark or extreme. Sometimes it's simply a fragile side you were once ridiculed for, a fear of abandonment you've never named, or a desire for freedom you've long labeled selfish. We hide these parts, afraid they'll make us unlovable. But what is rejected never disappears. It simply turns into unconscious behavior, manifesting as jealousy, control, unrealistic expectations, or unexplainable withdrawal. And here's the truth. The more repressed the shadow, the more it dominates our relationships. We love someone and then resent them for not filling our inner void. We demand honesty, but we ourselves haven't faced our own wounds. We ask others to heal us without ever having the courage to enter our own healing process. In love, the shadow often appears most vividly. Because love leaves no hiding place. Intimacy makes us visible, and vulnerable to having old wounds touched. A careless word from someone we love can reopen a childhood wound. A moment of inattentiveness can echo the old pain of being abandoned. But instead of turning inward, we blame them. They're insensitive, they don't care. We react to the present person, but are actually projecting from an unhealed past. The shadow also leads us to choose the wrong people. If you carry a belief deep down that I'm not worthy, you'll find yourself drawn to those who are emotionally unavailable. If your shadow fears being controlled, you'll overreact even in healthy relationships, mistaking safety for suffocation. And so, you may end up pushing away relationships that could have nurtured you, simply to remain in the familiar loop of pain. To build a meaningful relationship, it's not enough to love the other person. You must have the courage to look inward. When you start asking, why am I reacting this way? Instead of, why are they doing this to me? That's when your true healing begins. The shadow is not the enemy. It is a gentle reminder that a forsaken part of your soul is longing to be embraced. Only when you make peace with yourself can you stop searching for someone else to fill the void. And in that space, love can finally blossom, not from lack, but from wholeness. 3. Observe behavior, and you'll see the soul in a world where words can be polished, rehearsed, and repeated like a carefully composed melody. Behavior is the one thing that cannot be faked. When someone isn't ready to speak their truth, their body will speak for them. When the mind still hides, the eyes, the rhythm of the voice, and how they respond to others will reveal everything. Carl Jung believed, the language of the soul is not words, but symbols and behavior. If you truly want to understand someone, don't just listen to what they say. Watch how they live. It's in the smallest of actions, how they treat a stranger, how they react to a delay, how they behave toward those who offer no benefit, that the doorway into their inner world quietly opens. A person may say they're humble, but if you see them look down on the waiter, that statement is meaningless. Someone may proclaim kindness, but if they walk past an elderly person in need without pause, that kindness is just a mask. It's in the unnoticed moments, habits, reflexes, and attitudes, where their soul is revealed most clearly. Psychology calls this the moment of default, the moment when a person returns to their natural unguarded state. In that moment, the ego loses control and unconscious behavior takes over. And here's the astonishing truth. These moments are the ones that most honestly reflect who we really are. For example, if someone is tired, in a rush, or has nothing to gain, but still chooses to act with integrity, that is a trustworthy signal. On the other hand, if someone is kind only when being watched or when it benefits them, their behavior reflects not character, but calculation. So observe someone when they think no one is watching. Do they still clean up after themselves in public spaces? Do they thank the person who held the door? Do they help others when there's no reward? It is in those anonymous actions that you will discover who they truly are. Carl Jung once wrote, "Show me how you act when you're not seen, and I will tell you who you really are." And it remains true. Behavior, not titles or self-proclaimed values, is the living proof of character. What's even more powerful is this. Once you learn how to see others through their behavior, you begin to reflect more deeply on your own. What does your behavior say about you? How do you treat those who are weaker than you? Are you kind because it is your nature or because it's your image? To observe others deeply is to learn how to live with depth. And to live sincerely through your actions, that is how you inspire others without ever needing to say a word. 4. True love begins when you stop searching and start integrating yourself. We grow up with a romantic illusion that somewhere out there, a special person will appear to complete us, our missing half, our twin flame, our destiny. But the deeper truth, and also the more liberating one, is this. True love doesn't come from finding the right person, but from becoming the person who is ready to love wholly. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And this applies to love as well. We cannot love fully if we spend our lives chasing the light in others, without ever daring to look into the darkness within ourselves. You can read hundreds of books, watch thousands of videos about love, but if you've never faced the parts of yourself you've rejected, every relationship will repeat the same silent tragedy. Because the other, no matter their face, will merely be a mirror, reflecting back the pieces of yourself that remain unhealed. Stopping the search for love outside of you is not giving up. It is a spiritual shift. It turns you inward, to the place where true love actually begins, loving yourself. Not in a cliché sense, but with awareness, integration, and compassion for your whole raw being. Love isn't about being chosen by someone. It's about choosing yourself. When you begin the work of integration, when you stop denying your own weakness, wounds, anger, or need for control, you no longer need someone else to complete you. You don't love to be filled. You love from a place of fullness. And here's the paradox. It is precisely when you stop craving love that true love can arrive. Not the kind of love that clings, controls, or depends, but a deeper connection, rooted in freedom and presence. No longer is it, I need you to feel loved, but instead, I love you because I already know how to love myself. True love begins when you stop seeking external validation and start offering that validation to yourself. At that point, you no longer look for someone to make you feel enough. You become the one who can love from a place of enoughness. And from that energy, love no longer needs to be pursued. It finds you. 5. Transformation begins with acceptance, not perfection. In the journey of self-discovery and growth, one of the most crucial elements is acceptance. Not perfection, but the willingness to accept oneself with all dimensions, both luminous and shadowed, is what opens the path to a truly elevated and fulfilling life. Carl Jung taught that when we learn to accept ourselves, we embrace not only the beautiful aspects, but also the incomplete, the forgotten, the disowned parts hidden in the shadows of the soul. Most of us grow up dreaming of being perfect, in the eyes of others, and in our own self-image. We seek perfection in our relationships, in our careers, even in the minutiae of daily habits. But ironically, it is this desire for perfection that becomes the root of so much suffering and inner conflict. Because when we hold ourselves to impossible standards, we live with a constant sense of lack. Never enough, never truly happy. Jung pointed out that this persistent sense of insufficiency is a signal that we have not yet accepted ourselves. When we reject our imperfections, we create a divide between our real self and our ideal self. This disconnect doesn't just leave us exhausted or anxious. It creates a veil, a wall between us and the world. In contrast, complete acceptance becomes the doorway to transformation. Acceptance does not mean we excuse our mistakes without accountability. It means we see, understand, and hold space for our weaknesses, our pain, and our flaws in order to grow from them. To accept is to realize that we are not meant to be carbon copies of some ideal. We are evolving beings constantly in process. When we begin to see ourselves through a lens of compassion and empathy, we discover that our deepest wounds often hide the seeds of our greatest potential. There is a hidden strength within those scarred parts of us, a creative force waiting to be accessed once we stop avoiding and start facing. Accepting oneself is the first step on the path of healing and inner transformation. It is not a surrender to weakness, but a form of awakening, a recognition of the parts of us that are crying out for care, for wholeness. When we begin to accept ourselves, we stop chasing perfection on the outside, and we cease blaming others or circumstances for the struggles we face. This does not mean we no longer grow. It means we begin to grow from a solid, rooted place, our own self. In relationships, self-acceptance also becomes a bridge to deeper connections. Because when we learn to love and accept ourselves, we stop depending on others to fill the empty spaces inside. Love is no longer a quest to find something missing out there. It becomes a homecoming. And this is the foundation of authentic, lasting relationships. When we no longer need someone else to complete us, we simply need them to arrive in their own wholeness. Transformation begins when we realize that our so-called flaws, the disowned parts we once feared, may actually carry the power to change our lives. To walk the path of transformation, we must do something that many avoid: face our own darkness. And when we finally summon the courage to do this, we stop being afraid of our mistakes and stop worrying about whether we're good enough. Every scar and every wound becomes a marker on our journey. And when we recognize that, we begin to feel freer than ever before. To accept yourself does not mean to stay still. It means you can finally move forward from a place of peace. It is the foundation for loving others completely, and it is the key to creating profound change in your life. When we stop chasing perfection out there, we see that our so-called flaws are not obstacles. They are doorways. And that is when true transformation begins. 6. Difficult relationships are lessons in disguise. On the journey of growth, we often find ourselves drawn to relationships that offer comfort and happiness. We long for peace, for effortless conversations, and for the absence of conflict. Yet life is never painted in a single hue. In truth, the most painful, complex, and even confrontational relationships are often the most valuable lessons we are meant to learn in order to evolve. Carl Jung once said, "The relationships we seek are not always the ones we need." When we face tension, discomfort, or emotional chaos in a relationship, it may feel like punishment, as if we are being tested, hurt, or even abandoned. But from a different perspective, these relationships are sacred opportunities, moments that invite us to look deeper into ourselves and confront the aspects we have yet to fully understand or accept. When someone causes us pain or unease, it is not merely a clash of personalities. It is often a signal from the unconscious, a call to heal old wounds, a mirror reflecting something within us that needs our attention. Perhaps somewhere in the past, we endured similar hurt without the chance to fully process it. These difficult relationships bring those experiences back to the surface, not to torment us, but to give us another chance to transform them. Jung referred to this as projection, the psychological process through which we project unacknowledged parts of ourselves onto others. When someone makes us angry, fearful, or disappointed, it is not always because they have done something wrong. Rather, it could be that they have activated an unresolved fear, insecurity, or unintegrated shadow within us. Instead of blaming the other, if we choose to turn inward, we begin to see that these emotional triggers are opportunities for self-examination and healing. A common example lies in romantic relationships. When a partner's behavior makes us feel trapped or controlled, it may not be about them, but about our own unaddressed fear of losing autonomy. Perhaps we were once hurt by a lack of control in the past, or perhaps we never learned how to establish clear boundaries. Our intense reactions may stem not from the present moment, but from past pain that has yet to be acknowledged. By facing and accepting the parts of ourselves that we once disowned, we begin not only to heal the current relationship, but also to deepen our understanding of who we are. Sometimes these relationships serve a purpose beyond healing. They become catalysts for profound growth. The people who challenge us the most, those who seem difficult, confusing, or even unreachable, may in fact be our greatest teachers. They force us to confront the ways in which we relate to ourselves and the world around us. The goal is not to fix every conflict or keep every relationship intact, but to understand that within each difficulty lies a hidden lesson in patience, in compassion, in surrender. When we are tested in relationships, we are also being asked to learn how to love ourselves more deeply. Loving oneself is not only about self-care or personal well-being, it is about acknowledging the parts of us we once denied or hid from view. When we can embrace ourselves fully, we grow stronger, no longer driven by fear or shadow. A difficult relationship only becomes a true lesson when we are willing to open our hearts and observe it from a place of clarity. Begin seeing every relationship in your life as an opportunity for evolution. They may challenge you, but if you learn to embrace what's been hidden within yourself, these connections will lead you to deeper and more meaningful experiences. The important thing is this: don't let difficult relationships become burdens. See them as opportunities to reinvent yourself. When you begin to view every encounter as a part of your maturing process, you will move beyond pain and toward gratitude, and with it, maturity. In the end, difficult relationships are teachers. They help you discover your authentic self. They remind you that every emotion and every experience has a purpose. And when you've learned enough from these moments, you will emerge as someone more complete, Someone who can love with sincerity and depth, not in spite of the pain, but because you have embraced it. 7. Love is not a destination, but a journey back to the true self. In the conventional understanding of society, love is often seen as a destination, a place we are supposed to arrive at, a state we must attain. We imagine love to be the ultimate goal of life, the well-earned reward after a long path of searching and sacrifice. But when we look more deeply into the nature of love, we begin to realize that true love is not a destination. It is a journey in which we not only learn how to love others, but more importantly, how to love ourselves and return to our most authentic essence. Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychological minds of our time, taught that love is not something we find outside of ourselves. It is an inner experience. It is a journey inward, where we begin to see and accept every part of ourselves, even those we have rejected or refused to acknowledge. Love, in Jung's view, is not something we are given by others, but something we must first discover within. And when we learn to love ourselves with sincerity, love from others arrives naturally. Love begins from within when we understand that loving ourselves is not selfish. It is the foundation of all meaningful relationships. Love is not merely romance or emotional satisfaction. It is a process of self-acceptance, healing, and growth. When we learn to love ourselves, we create space for healthy and lasting connections, not because we need others to complete us, but because we are ready to share the fullness of who we are. In this journey of loving, we don't just learn to cherish the beautiful parts of ourselves. We learn to face and embrace our shadows, our imperfections, and the parts we once hid away. Love is a process of awareness and integration, including the shadow self, the aspects of our psyche we once denied. And it is through this process that love makes us whole and makes us stronger. As Jung once said, when we refuse to accept our shadow, we seek love outside of ourselves, hoping someone else will give us what we lack. But this only leaves us feeling more empty and desperate. When we finally learn to face and integrate the shadow, we not only begin to love ourselves, we also find peace in our relationships. We stop searching for validation and fulfillment from others, and instead arrive in relationships from a space of wholeness, freedom, and truth. This does not mean that we no longer need love or connection. On the contrary, once we learn to love ourselves, we become capable of loving others more deeply. We are no longer bound by unrealistic expectations or emotional dependency. Instead, we can live with freedom and respect. True love is not about finding someone to fill the void. It is about sharing the fullness of your being with another. Love is not a final destination. It is a path. It is not a place we need to reach, but a process of discovery, learning, and growth. When we love ourselves, when we no longer seek love outside to validate our worth, we begin to find that every relationship becomes more natural and sincere. Love is no longer a bond of dependency. It becomes a connection between free, mature, and sovereign beings. This journey of love is not a straight line, it is a circle, a constant return to the self, a cycle of rediscovery and devotion. Only when we learn to love ourselves completely can love from others become a meaningful addition to our lives, not an endless pursuit. Love is not the end of the path, but a sacred part of the journey home, to the true self. Love is not the end of a journey, but a continuous process where each individual keeps learning, growing, and evolving. True relationships, those deep and lasting loves, can only emerge from the moment we learn how to love ourselves, from the act of accepting and integrating every part of who we are. Carl Jung pointed out that in order to truly love another, you must begin by loving and caring for yourself, because every external connection is a mirror, a reflection of your relationship with your own being. When you stop chasing love outside of yourself, when you stop fearing loneliness or lack, you begin to realize that love is a state of being within you, an abundant energy you can share with the world. The more you accept and love yourself, the more you open the door to genuine connections, relationships where love is not about possession or dependency, but about mutual enrichment. True love is not a destination. It is an ongoing journey of self-discovery and personal growth. And it is within that journey that you will find true peace, freedom, and fulfillment.